Okay. So, that was the story and that was the scenario. And so after I say I reserve all my rights, they, once I get to the point where I'm like objecting and, like, objecting things, whatever, or I'm saying, I'm challenging the judge's authority or whatever, because this is the thing. Once you put them on notice, then they have to abide by all of your rights. You have to understand that when you're going through these processes and you're dealing with these agencies, whether it's the IRS, whether it's the IRS, whether it's the court, whether it's whoever, when you're dealing with these processes, when you're dealing with these agencies, so-called allegedly government, which is nothing but a business. U.S. corporation is a business. And when you're dealing with these people and these agencies, I don't care any government, it doesn't matter what you're dealing with. They are all businesses, and they love to instill fear. But what you have to understand, that when you're dealing with these processes, you waive your rights. Your government name, the reason that you have the government name, the reason that you have the driver license, the ID, the whatever you have, is because it subjugates you to this authority, and so you are defaulted into all of these things that's going to happen to you. You're automatically defaulted. And so, of course, and then they get to be the narcissist that they are, because if you ever hear anything that I talk, anything that I put out, I always call the government is the biggest narcissist in, and people, because we are defaulted like the straw man. When you think about, the Wizard of Oz, and you think about Dorothy, her dog being her intuition, the straw man being, the legal fiction, and then the duality of the straw man was the Tin Man, who was a heartless person, which was basically the Social Security number, and things of that nature. And so, just understanding these terms and putting things into the proper perspective and alignment, you have to understand that these people love to instill fear, and because you were born in this America, and you were born in hospitals, and you were born and they pledged you as security, and you're automatically defaulted into their jurisdiction. And if you don't assert your rights, you waive them, and so you're automatically defaulted into their rules and their regulations and their authorities, until you bring yourself above the veil of consciousness and understand who you are legally, spiritually, and you understand that really, to where you can speak boldly and confidently when when you come from a place of spirituality, being spiritually grounded. And so my number one thing that I tell anybody is to be, number one, before I'm talking about, I don't care what you're facing, with what you're dealing with, what you're facing, when you're dealing with legal issues, legalities, the thing that you need to, one is always bring yourself in alignment with truth, and bring yourself above the veil of consciousness. When you operate from the veil of consciousness within yourself, within your home, within your relationships, within any, everything that you do, you are bringing yourself in alignment with truth, because there are three types of truths. There's personal truths, there's objective truth, and then there's spiritual truths. Spiritual truths are objective truths, which you will have relationships, and you will have experiences with science, and science is unseen spirituality, and spirituality is unseen science. They are dualities of each other. Everything operates in duality, and that brings us to our second step. Guide two is basically duality. Understanding that there is duality in everything. That government name is not who you are. That is just the legal fiction that they have authority and control over, and they operate that person like a freaking slave. It's a debtor. It's really a debtor, and they operate it like a slave. It's heartless, it's emotionless, and things of that nature. If you were referring to the Wizard of Oz, I always refer to that movie. And it's so crazy. If you ever let your children watch this movie, you will be amazed. If you don't don't talk to them about the movie. Let them watch the movie without you. Like, I let my daughter watch it without explaining to her anything, and then the ideologies that she came up with afterwards, and she, like, it was very interesting and very intriguing to hear and to understand how smart and how well articulated your children really are. If they can comprehend that movie, they are like really some really up to date, very um, you know smart children, intelligent, very intelligent children. And so yeah, and so when you're going through courts, because they're gonna put on a fraud, they're gonna put on a show, and they have to do it because they don't want to alarm the public that people are really out here getting free, and that they don't have authority over you. But the problem is that people don't read, and everything is right in plain sight. And this is why the judge loved to say, and the judges love to quote that ignorance of the law is no excuse. And so just because you don't understand the rules, right? And that's not my fault. I'm not here to teach you the rules, but since you don't know the rules, I don't care if you know the rules or not. This is what's going to happen, and this is what it is. You know what I mean? It's not my fault that you don't understand the rules associated with what's going on. And so this is why I'm very huge on pushing the rules, because the rules are in plain sight. You have the Bill of Rights, and then you have the Constitution, which they try to mirror the Constitution with the Bill of Rights. But your human rights, because you are a human, this is your avatar, this is your body, right? You are a human person, and this is your body, is inside, your spirit is inside this avatar, and that's what this avatar you have to navigate while you're here on earth. And so you are duality, but you're a spirit being, and then your body is your property. So when you understand that, and then you understand that your government name is not who you are, that's just what gives them control over you, and their legal control over you or whatever. And so this is understanding that. So when they're referring to you, they're referring to the corporate fiction, the legal fiction, the the corporate, the soulless person, right? They're treating you as if, and operating you as if you're a business. And if you go look up those words, person, person, and all these other terms associated with person, individual, and all these, if you look under any state statute, any state statute, any federal statute or whatever, you will see that your state law, basically your state constitution. If you go look up that, you would understand that not one of those words mean you are a spirit, living soul type of person at all. It's all associated with legal fiction and things of that nature. And so keeping yourself into alignment with consciousness is basically being over the veil of consciousness, is basically you wouldn't know that there was a problem, right, if you wasn't aware of it. You have to be aware of something to know that there is a problem or an issue that exists. So you have to be aware that there is something wrong or something not right. You have to be consciously aware. And how do we understand that? We understand that because we apply our truth to the situation. We bring ourselves into alignment with truth, and the more conscious you are, the more knowledge you have, the more right knowledge that you have, the more you equipped you are, and the more confident you can speak about a thing or anything, any subject, anything. So my biggest thing, one is being above the veil of consciousness, always being in truth. I always talk about the sword of truth because I'm like the sword of truth. I'm very realistic with myself, and it helps me assert myself. I can be able to assert myself the way that I need to assert myself, without fear, without anything, because I'm always going under the sword. When you're under the sword, you get cut, and it cuts you, and you bleed, and it's painful, and it hurts, and it burns. And you have to go with the healing process before you're able, it cuts you before it heals you. So before you heal, you got to get cut, and you have to go under the sword, and you have to feel the repercussions of that sword. And so you bleed, and you bleed, and you bleed, and it's very painful to want to, some truths are very harsh, but those are the things. When you continuously bring yourself into alignment with spirit, discipline will be number one, and truth will be number two. Those are the two dualities that you will constantly live in when you live in the state of truth. And the more harmony you are with spirit, the more disciplined you are to be able to